and welcome to Let's Talk Personal. I'm your host, as always, Frances Reimers. Thank you for joining us today after the long 4th of July holiday weekend. If you were like me, you probably did not want to go to work today or do anything productive, but I really appreciate you joining in with us. And speaking of joining in with us, if you'd like to join the conversation, you can see us or join with us and chat with us on LTP Brand Radio on Twitter and Let's Talk Personal on Instagram. If you'd like to talk personally to me, you can reach me at Your Firestarter on Twitter and Firestarter CEO on Instagram. Super excited for today's show. Part of the reason that I was able to drag my tired butt out of bed today and be productive, super excited. With me today is one of my most favorite new friends in the whole wide world, Mr. Malcolm Lemons. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here. How was your 4th?
It was great.
Very low key.
Yeah, pretty chill.
Because we're adults,
right?
And we gotta do adult things. So for those of you that don't know, Malcolm is a super big deal lately, and I've mentioned him several times on the show. He is an author, an entrepreneur, and we're gonna get all to that here in just a second. But Malcolm is actually going to help me answer a fan email really quick before we get started. I actually do get fan emails, believe it or not. Believe it or not, there's some creepers out there in the world that send in emails. Some of them are a little catty and mean, but there was one that I wanted to debunk right now before we got into this week's show. And the question was, do we have teleprompter or cue cards or anything that help us produce the show? And the answer is no. The only thing that we have to help us along is our handy little notes right here and my unbelievable gift of gab. And can you confirm that there are no aids whatsoever?
None at all.
It's
None
just
at all.
us. It's us.
Free flowing.
I mean, Lord help
Natural
us.
conversation.
Yeah, Lord help us. But enough about me. Let's talk about you. You have a very fun and interesting story that is, even as you informed me before we started off today's show, ever evolving.
Yeah,
you have transitioned from student athlete to professional basketball player to entrepreneur and author, and maybe back to another location in your journey. Talk a little bit how your brand has evolved and this journey that in your very, very young life that you've gone on.
Right. So it's been a wild journey. Going from a student athlete and focusing on basketball in school my whole life to, wanting to be a professional athlete. That was my eventual goal and what I always wanted to be. So, I was very, very tunnel vision on basketball. Didn't really think about what I wanted to do, as another career or in life after sports. So. Basketball was the focus, student athlete, professional athlete. And then, I had a transition period from, when I was playing my second year in Japan, right before that, where I sat out a little bit and I kind of, thought to myself, what else am I more than just an athlete? What else can I do? What else can, what other career I can transition into? So that's kind of where the whole entrepreneurship author kind of came in, and I started writing. I started, highlighting my journey, my experiences, what got me to, become a professional athlete and the certain things that I went through. Before I knew it, I became an author, now I'm considering going back overseas to, pursue playing another year of professional basketball while I still can. So.
And you're more than just an author. You actually are a journalist of sorts and have published, have many published works out there, one of them with Huffington Post. How did those opportunities come your way?
Right. So I have a friend who works for the Huffington Post, and, I've been blogging and writing for a couple of years now just because it was kind of just therapeutic for me. I just always enjoyed it. So she saw some of my work and kind of extended the opportunity to me. And I mean, who's going to pass that up?
No, no. I mean, when somebody offers you something, you take it.
Right. So
I mean, even if you're not ready for it, you fake it until you make it.
Exactly.
Right? Is there a publication or online publication or print publication that you would like to write for?
Eventually, I would want to write for Forbes. in entrepreneurship.com, things like that. So
Inc.
yeah,
Those kinds. Yeah, love
yeah.
Inc. Yeah.
So stuff like that, that relates to business and entrepreneurship and career transition, things of that nature.
And was there, in your very, very folks, I just want to keep reiterating this. This is a very short journey thus far. I mean, this just like a hot minute ago. Has there ever been a point in your journey where you're like, who am I? What narrative am I trying to create here? And how did you get from one place to the other? Because I think that's the hardest part for people is defining who they are and where they're going and how they tell that story. So how did that evolve for you? How did that come to fruition?
Right. So I think with athletes, it's like I said before, such a tunnel vision on sports. You don't really know who you are because you've been an athlete for so long. So for me, it was trying new things, trying to get out and really just experimenting and kind of, trial and error and figuring out what I liked, what I'm passionate about, what I value, and kind of figure out what I want my future to look like. So it's a long process, and I'm still kind of going through it right now to figure out, where do I want to be in 5 to 10 years? What do I want my life to look like? And, regular people go through it, and athletes, I think, it's more significant for them because, of that tunnel vision and of that focus on one thing. They don't have time to branch out and find other interests, and other passions. So it was very difficult, and I'm kind of glad that I went through it, earlier rather than later. You know? And that transition period from when I went into my first year playing overseas, my second year, it was huge. It was huge. I learned a lot about myself, and even when I went back over, just the time I had to, you practice for maybe an hour or two, and then you have the rest of the day to do whatever. So you have that time to actually find out who you are.
Right. And did you have an kind of Oprah aha moment, or was it something that kind of gradually built over time and one day you were like, oh, okay, we're at this destination? How did that evolve for you?
No, I don't think it's an aha moment. I think people are constantly evolving. People are constantly growing. You never find that one day where it's like, this is who I am. You change over time. Right. And people, they everyone does it. So I'm still, like I said, going through that phase where I'm trying to figure out, who exactly Malcolm is. Right. But it's just going to take time, and you adjust, and you grow with it.
Right. And you've gone through periods where it could be very easy for your brand to be manipulated or pulled in a direction that maybe is not authentic to you. And I don't think that's happened to you. I think your brand is very much, you've not been manipulated. Right, I think your brand is very much authentic to you, and how have you been able to maintain that? How have you been able to hold the reins to make sure that what people see and hear and when they Google your name, what comes up is truly you?
That's a good question.
This is what I do. I ask the good questions.
I think just the people around me, definitely contribute to that, me staying true to who I am throughout the whole process. And I think, my family is very big on, how people perceive you and the things you do. You have to take into consideration how people see you every day, or how people view you. And so I try not to do anything where people may have a certain perception of an action I may take or something I post on social media. So I'm very conscious about the things that I put out or the things that I say or anything that I do, because people are watching, and it matters. So
all the time,
especially nowadays where you have all these different social media outlets. You can't do anything wrong, and you have to, as an athlete, it's even more, it's that much more important, because all eyes are on you, so you have to take into consideration how people may view certain things that you do.
Right. And obviously you're very hyper aware of the impact of social media and making decisions. In your evolution, these decisions have been very strategic. A lot of people, especially young athletes, as they're making that transition, don't have the ability to be as strategic. So what advice would you give to somebody who is on their journey so that they make the same kind of calculated, and I don't mean calculated in a negative way, but calculated decisions that you've made? Because I don't think that's intrinsic to a lot of people. So what advice would you give to that journey?
Just be aware of, the people that you surround yourself with and the things that you put out there. So like I said, it's not easy to be, to be conscious of everything that you put out. That's a hard thing to do, and it's hard to really think about, like, well, how's someone else going to perceive this, and to think about every single thing that you put out on social media. That's not an easy thing to do. So,
right.
I would vet it. I would, ask somebody who I'm close to, or, well, how would you see this if I did this, or, would somebody perceive, something I say on Twitter a certain way. So, right. Surround yourself with people who's going to have your best interests in mind, and,
right.
and really, vet everything that you put out. It may be tedious, but that's, if you want to build a quality brand, that's what you have to do.
And everyone that you surround themselves with, are these people who would be considered, marketing savvy, or are these just people that you trust?
People that I trust. So my family members, close friends.
Right.
Yeah. So.
And so you don't. So the moral of the story is you don't necessarily have to have somebody like me who's a marketing and branding expert to be in your corner. Although it does help.
Yeah.
It does help to have Francis as a friend,
it does
right?
Help.
I mean, it certainly, it's not a bad thing.
Right.
I mean, you can be friends with me.
Right.
And it does help you. But if that's not the case for you, if you don't have somebody,
exactly.
it's more of just bouncing information off of somebody, just so that you have another set of eyes, another set of ears to make sure that you're not doing something. Because one post, you can do all of this work to build this amazing brand, and all it takes is one post or one bad interview or whatever to bring it back down.
Exactly.
And you're working from scratch again.
Exactly.
So it's really important that you're cognizant of that. But speaking of brand, you wrote a book, and so we're going to take a little break, and when we get back from our break, we are actually going to talk about his new book and hear all about why this book, why now, and give a little bit of details of what audiences can expect. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Let's Talk Personal. I'm your host, Frances Reimers. Joining with me today is Malcolm Lemons. And before we went to the break, we were talking to Malcolm a little bit about his journey from student athlete to professional basketball player to entrepreneur and author, and potentially back to basketball player, because why not? You can wear as many hats as you want to. Not only am I a talk show host, but I'm also a circus clown. Do that on the weekends, going to clown school. No, not really. But so before the break, I alluded to that we were going to talk about your new book. So folks, for those of you that don't know, he is the author of a real legit book called Lessons from the Game. And I'm super excited to read this and find out all the deets. This is your first book, correct?
Very first one.
So it's awesome, but if you cannot see the cover, I do want to point out that when I saw the cover photograph to this book, I was like, this strangely looks awfully like that movie Baby Boy. What was it, Tyrese? Is that who was in that movie? I was like, I've seen this picture somewhere before. I was like, this is I don't want to take away from all the amazing lessons that are inside this book. Talk a little bit about why this book, why now, how did this come to light? Walk us through that.
Well, so like I said before, I always kind of wrote because it was therapeutic for me. So being my second year in Japan playing basketball, I had nothing but time.
Right.
My internet connection was very limited, so I had a laptop, excuse me. And, I just started writing. I started, going through the whole process of, what got me here, what obstacles did I go through, and kind of, recalling my experiences in a way. So I had gotten to a point where I wrote so much, I started sharing it with people. And one of the people that I shared it with was one of my friends who actually was a professional athlete as well. And he had wrote a book. So, he kind of read it over and, he said, you should really consider turning this into a story. And I didn't really give it, a lot of thought at the time. But, over time, I started writing more and more. And, I got in touch with his publisher and, we created a book, essentially. So it kind of happened by accident. But, when you ask why now, I think, a lot of the things in that book, it's of course, my story through basketball, but it's also the certain lessons, particular lessons that I took from basketball and how I used it in life. So things such as patience and, appreciation and, finding out who you are in life after sports. I detail a lot of those experiences in that book. And for an athlete who's going through so much, I think it's really relatable because, I came from, being essentially a no-name and not many people knew who I was in high school. I got cut as a sophomore, transferred my last year of college, and even sat out part of my first year out of school, and worked 2 jobs to still try to pursue this dream. And I put so much into it. And I think, just through my story, I think a lot of athletes can learn from it and take what they use or what they learned in basketball or in any type of sport and use it to any, career or anything that they do in life thereafter. So.
Right. And in the book, you talk a lot about, mental health issues, adversity and overcoming it and setbacks and all these kinds of things, which a lot of people, especially men in the athletic world, wouldn't necessarily be game, no pun intended, for talking about their feelings and feelings of defeat and feeling of confusion and whatnot. How was that for you, and what has been the reception, especially amongst your athlete friends, about you putting your business out there like that?
I think a lot of people think it's admirable. It's courageous to actually be vulnerable to a point where you're expressing every obstacle or failure that you've experienced, and you're telling the whole world But I think that's how you relate to people. You know, through your failures and showing somebody, I've gone through this too, and you can learn, what I did to overcome it. So it's very difficult to do so, but I think You know, that's the great thing about it. I'm trying to inspire, you know, another athlete, even if it's just one. You know, if I can make a difference in, you know, somebody else's life, then I feel like I've done a good deed for them, or, you know, I've changed, you know, the way their future might be. So
right. But this book is definitely not just applicable to athletes.
No.
I mean, this is really stories and life wisdom, if you will, that's applicable to anyone at in any career, right?
Yeah. So the intangibles that you learn in sports, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, you're an athlete, you don't have job experience, or you can't do anything else but just be an athlete. But, you know, the intangibles that you learn, you know, they can be used in anything that you do in life. So the hard work, the determination, the teamwork, the competitiveness, the, you know, time management, organizational skills, like all those things that you learn from being a student athlete, they can be used in any career that you choose. And I kind of, you know, reiterate that message throughout the book. It's like, you're not just an athlete.
Right.
You're a person who just happens to play a sport.
Right.
But you're more than just an athlete. So,
Right.
you know, I think that's huge.
And to think of yourself as more of just an athlete. I think too often, I mean, I have this conversation with clients all the time, men and women who are, you know, 15, 20 years well past their playing days, and they still just view themselves as an athlete.
Right.
And it's like, well, you've lived this whole life. You're far more than just an athlete. So I think it's really important, and a very important brand lesson that you view yourself as a multi-dimensional person.
Right.
Because if you think of yourself as just an athlete, that's
what you're going to be.
that's what you're going to be. It's, you know, it's kind of manifest destiny, right? And I love the fact that this book is encouraging young men and women to look at the bigger picture. That sports is what you have now, but it's not always going to be what you have, and so you need to think bigger and beyond.
Yeah.
The book is going to be available in paperback, but it's also available online for people to download, correct?
Yeah, the Kindle version is available now. We'll probably have the paperback version available sometime next week.
Okay. And what future plans are there for this book? Is there other things in the works or thoughts about how you're going to expand on this little empire you have here?
Preferably, I would want to create a workbook version where we can actually create a curriculum for student athletes and get that into universities and high schools.
Right.
But I'll be doing a book signing actually sometime in August, so we're planning that. That's in the works.
You're in the DC metro area?
Yep, in the DC area.
Perfect. Part of the proceeds from your book go to a charity. Talk about that and how that relationship developed and why.
So part of the proceeds will be going to Soul Programs, which is a nonprofit in Ward 7, DC. And I've been friends with the founder for about 3 years, Donald Curtis, and he's a very good guy. You know, he played basketball in college, and he's from DC area, so he founded this nonprofit to make an impact on some of the lower income student athletes in that area. So they provide leadership programs, career development programs, and just different things just to help these athletes who don't necessarily have those resources,
Right.
You know, advance in their athletic career, but also, you know, in school and, you know, in any other aspect of life that they may be struggling with. So
Right.
I've decided to partner with them and kind of donate some of those proceeds, just because I've seen the impact that he's had on a lot of student athletes.
Right.
You know, they have partnerships with HD Woodson in Northeast Washington, D.C., and a couple other schools in that area as well. So they're just making a huge difference. And,
Right.
you know, I just thought it fitting, you know, being, you know, an athlete
Right.
going through a lot of obstacles. I can relate to, you know, a lot of things that these kids are going through. So,
Right.
you know, he's great. And they're making a huge difference in D.C. and helping a lot of kids.
And what's the name of that organization again?
Soul Program. So,
Okay. So if you're interested in helping that organization or getting involved with them in any sort of way, look them up online. I'll provide that information on our social media after the show airs, so people can also give to that organization and get involved. We're going to take a break really quick, but when we get back, we're going to get back into the fun and interesting stuff. We're going to find out from Malcolm the good and bad and ugly of his social media journey. Get the deets there. I'm sure there's something good. So hang tight. We'll be right back with you. right, and we're back. Welcome back to Let's Talk Personal. I'm your host, Frances Reimers. If you'd like to join in the conversation today or have anything you'd like to tell us, you can join us on Twitter at LTP Brand Radio or Let's Talk Personal on Instagram. So before we went to break, we were talking to Malcolm about his amazing book, Please, Lessons from the Game. And you can go on to Amazon right now and check it out, and you can download the Kindle version right now, right? Okay. So check it out. It's amazing. If you are a high school coach or a college coach, this would be a great publication to give to your students to kind of help guide them into the next phase of their life. So definitely check it out. Speaking of your basketball career, you alluded to that you spent some time overseas. What are some of the biggest challenges for athletes that go overseas to play, particularly about their life there and their brand?
I think the biggest challenge, it doesn't happen on the court. It's really off the court. As you can imagine, you're living in a totally different culture. So you have to make that adjustment. You have to adjust to their culture, their the food, the religion, anything. So you have to be prepared. And I think for me, it was being very open-minded to a whole different world and kind of welcoming it, taking it one day at a time and just trying to learn about a different culture, don't kind of push it to the side because it's weird or unfamiliar to you. So that was huge for me, just going over there and just being very open-minded, getting out, exploring the city, engaging with the people, just realizing that they're just another person. So that was big. And as far as my brand, if there's any athlete overseas right now, I think the biggest thing they could do in order to keep their brand intact and keep it relevant is to actually engage with people. So reach out to people who, may be able to help you in the future, and people who see you as a role model. And kind of keep that engagement. Talk to people and stay in touch with people back home. So that's huge.
Yeah, I definitely, having talked with a lot of athletes who are playing overseas or in the process of playing overseas, I think the biggest thing is once they go away, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind back here in the States. And it's important to keep creating content and engaging your high school fans, your college fans, people that are fans of the teams that you once played for, and staying on their radar so that in the event that you come back to the States, you're a known commodity rather than it's like, who's this dude? Like, where did he come from? But you touched on something I think is also important, which is getting out there and talking to people and engaging fans in the city, whether it's, whether you're in Japan or Italy or Spain. Talk a little bit about how you did that, how you engaged with people who are of a culture and a language completely different from your own.
Right.
I'm sure you stood out a little bit.
a little bit. But, of course, I'm not going to sit up here and say it was easy. It's very hard to communicate and relate to somebody who, you grew up totally different background, totally different culture. So it's learning their language, learning about, who they are and trying to communicate in any way possible, finding a common ground to where you guys have, something that you both have went through or you both like or you both experienced. And it's just getting to know another person, no matter whether they speak a different language or come from a different background. It's another human being. So for me, it was I really got out and I taught myself Japanese. I tried
Good for you.
I'm not fluent, but
Well, you would do better than me. I just know Mr. Roboto song from the 80s, so that's all I know. Well, when you would go out and about, did you take other team members with you, or were you kind of Han Solo doing your own thing and on your own journey?
A little bit of both.
Right.
So me and my teammates, we would go out and go down Shibuya and downtown Tokyo and just kind of just interact with other people, get to know, some of the people that live there. And a lot of them understand English. They may not speak it that well, but they definitely understand it. So, if you say something to them, they'll speak back. Japanese culture, they're kind of shy, but, if you're outgoing, if you're engaging, then they'll talk back. So.
One, did you like the food?
I did. I loved it.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So good. So good. 2, how often did you go karaoke?
I didn't get a chance to go
What?
out there. I didn't.
I don't even know you. I don't even know you. I mean,
but they love it out there.
They love
go,
it.
They go
I mean, if I moved to an Asian country, I would literally karaoke every day, all the time. I would just be like a barfly in karaoke bars. They love it. They really. That's my favorite thing about that culture. I'm like, God, I love you people. God bless you. And they will sing every terrible song.
And not
I
care.
love it. God bless them.
Not
God
care
bless
at
them.
all.
When you were overseas and then you made the transition back to the United States, what was the hardest part about that transition, particularly for your brand? Was it that you were an unknown commodity, and what was the first thing you did to kind of get the train back on the tracks?
Well, after my second year, when I had already started writing the book, I kind of had established a little bit of a social media presence. So the hardest thing was finding things or content that was engaging and of quality. So I kind of had to figure that and navigate that on my own. Like, well, should I really post this? Is this meaningful to who I am and to my brand? And does this really matter? Should I really put this out there? Right. So I think that was definitely the hardest part about going from athlete to figuring out what's next, kind of. So as an athlete, you get a lot of athletic photos, of course.
Right,
so
of course.
You post pictures of you playing basketball, but when you're not in season, when you're not playing, what do you put up there?
Right.
So it was kind of thinking through that.
And you actually touched on an important point that I don't think a lot of people, pro athletes, semi-pro athletes, occasional rec athletes, understand is, and you're touching on something that's very important, is content. And what is quality content? Yeah. I mean, you could post shirtless selfies of you leaning up against a car all day long, and the ladies will love it. But you touch on something that is so important, which is this worth posting? Because otherwise you just become noise. Yeah. So when did the light bulb turn on, or when did you have this moment where you're like, I don't want to be one of these athletes that are posting just nonsensical crap. I want to actually have something that people want to engage with. When did the light bulb turn on, and how did you shift the kind of content that you were posting?
Well, I guess I kind of figured it out when I kind of thought about how I wanted to be perceived a couple years down the line. What kind of career do I want to pursue? What do I value? What are my passions? And that's the audience that I want to attract. So you have to think about who's actually viewing these photos, or what you're saying, who's actually engaging with you, and kind of think about, what's your following look like? Right. So I think for me it just happened over time. I kind of I'm always very cautious about posting pictures. If I didn't think it was something that, I was kind of iffy about it, I wouldn't do it. So I really just thought about, how I want to be viewed years from now, not, in the moment, being an athlete, want to get females and this and that. I kind of, I thought about what my future would look like.
The females will come.
Yeah, they'll always be there no matter what you post.
They're not going anywhere.
If a girl finds you attractive,
if she's thirsty, she's thirsty.
Exactly.
It doesn't really
you don't need to have like a shirtless photo, like.
Yeah, I mean, people know how I feel about we need to, no more ass pictures on Instagram. I can't. I mean, I know guys like it, and I know there's guys that are like, ugh, but they stop. We don't. I don't need.
We don't need them.
Yeah. Thank you. So speaking of social media, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's what we're talking about. Talk to us a little bit about your social media journey. Is there anything fun or interesting, or something that's happened to somebody else that you're willing to throw out there? I always love to know the dirty deets of people's social media interactions.
Well, I won't give any dirty stories about me personally.
No, yeah, I mean, deflect.
My last year in school, we actually had a social media seminar. Where all the student athletes came, and we sat in a room, and we had somebody come out there and talk to us about the importance of your social media and the things that you post.
Right.
So the lady had actually went through every single student athlete on campus social media pages.
Yeah.
And she took specific photos and put them up on a projector. So if you had anything inappropriate, it was up there. And so there were some students who
I'm actually, as somebody who does that for a living, people, I'm actually going to be at a university tomorrow talking to athletes about their brand. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
She did it. I mean, it wasn't too like the photos weren't too anything obscure.
Okay,
It wasn't nothing too crazy, but it was like you probably should think about taking this down.
I mean, I'm sure people in the audience were just squirming.
They were like, it was a little awkward.
Yeah. I mean, that's really awkward.
Luckily, I wasn't up there, so
Yeah.
I didn't care.
You were like, not my problem.
But she had like a fake account, and she followed like almost every student athlete and went through all their photos.
It's a little creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make your point without having to go to those legs. Was it effective though?
It was very effective. I think people
That's
got
important.
the point out after that. So it just shows you that someone's always watching. You know,
Always.
you have to be careful about what you put out there. So it was a wake up call for a lot of athletes.
And in terms of the super positive, is there a time or an instance where you posted something or you said something and it really got a really awesome response, like somebody took action, or you were just like, I'm really glad that I posted that?
I like to think that everything that I post, prompts
Of course you
people.
do. Of course you do.
Prompts people to take
Of course you
action.
do.
I feel like I'm very inspirational. So.
Oh my god!
Not to toot my own horn, but
Oh my god!
I feel like
Slow your roll, Stevie Wonder. Like, oh my god, everything I post is so inspirational. No, that's good. No, you're very good with the post. You do a lot of content that has text overlay over image. Are there, most people like us, we have a graphic designer that helps us out. Do you have a graphic designer, or are there apps or tools that you use to help create your content?
I use a lot of apps, so I do a lot of research on my own to kind of figure out, what's the best app to use to, either enhance a photo or, put the text over the photo or anything of that nature. So,
and any one that you love more than others?
I use Word Swag. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
So I use that a lot. That's probably the main one. I can't really think of any other major app that I use.
I use Ripple a
Ripple?
lot.
I
Yeah,
think I've heard
that's
of
it.
that.
That's
Yeah.
one that I use a lot for myself and for clients. It's really inexpensive and super easy.
Right.
Also, the Adobe Illustrator app, it's super easy to use, so I love that one too.
Yeah.
Always trying to add to my repertoire. Do you doctor your images? Do you Photoshop your images in any sort of way?
I try not to. I put a little filter on there sometimes, but
Right.
I like it to be like natural. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't really use too many.
Guys, I mean, if guys are photoshopping
Yeah.
their pictures, for God's sakes, what does this world come to?
Right.
I'm old and not cool, so I Photoshop some of my pictures so that I look, more cool, I guess, if that can even be helped. But I try not to. I love me some filters. The Nashville filter is my favorite, but
there are some good filters.
there are some good filters, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference. So before we head into the fun, my favorite section of the show, the fun stuff, what advice would you give to the next Malcolm who's coming up, who's making this transition and wanting to kind of walk in your footsteps? What would be some advice that you would give to them, especially if there was something that, looking back on this very abridged journey, that you would do differently?
Well, I kind of have to reiterate what I said previously, and kind of just figuring out what you're passionate about, and kind of deciphering, what I want to do in the next 5 years. I'm a very long-term thinker, so it might be difficult for people to do so, but you really have to take into consideration, where you want to be in 5 years down the line. So I would start by, possibly doing a brand assessment, figuring out what you value, what you're passionate about,
Right.
And where you want to be. So
Right.
that's probably the best advice that I can give.
Now, when you say brand assessment, obviously people like me know exactly what that is, or tools that you can use. Let's say that you're just average Joe on the street. How would you even start with a brand assessment?
Well, I've taken one, but it was a long time ago. I would do some research on, what personal branding is, why it matters, and then kind of, there's tools online.
Yeah.
The internet is great, so if you don't have somebody like Francis to help you out, just do research online, kind of figure out,
Right.
well, what does personal branding mean? What do these
Right.
specific terms mean? What is having values and passions? What do they mean intrinsically, and figuring your way through that?
Right. And I mean, and taking it down to even just old school, if, what I do with clients often is, I literally just have them get a piece of paper, draw a circle, put their name in the middle, and say, okay, tell me all of the things that describe you.
Yeah,
And
you as a
that's
person.
an easy way to start. And then the next step after you have all these adjectives that describe you is say, okay, what audiences would be interested in
Right.
these particular things? And then let's start narrowing it down, because most people, when they start naming off all their adjectives, you know, it goes on and on and on. The next thing I say, well, let's narrow it down to about 3 or 5 that are manageable to you. Because, you know, we talked a lot about content. It's taking it from these adjectives to moving it over to content. You have to
Right.
build content around
Exactly.
these adjectives. And so, and it has to be believable.
Right.
Like I could say
Authentic.
I'm an astronaut, but we know I'm not an astronaut. 1, because I'm afraid of heights. 2, I don't want to be in a rocket. So I can't market myself as an astronaut. The leap is just too far.
Right.
So you really have to be real with yourself about your brand position, about who you really can, because when somebody meets you in person, right? You know, I know, because I know you, the Malcolm that people see online is exactly the same Malcolm that they
Exactly,
see,
yeah.
and because you have to back it up, right?
Yeah, you have to be genuine to who you are, or you know your brand is not going to sustain longevity.
Right, exactly, absolutely. So in the last little bit of this segment of the show, I love talking about the, you know, what is going on in the online world and what each of my guests are seeing and hearing and reading and loving. So my first question is whose personal brand is giving you life right now? Who's your big?
I would have to say Gary Vaynerchuk. You know,
Yeah,
I see his
everybody.
posts all the time. So
Right.
he really fires me up, not to go crazy, but like it's very motivational.
Right.
So I don't think he really tries to be. That's just who he is.
Right.
He tries to get people to take action, and so
He's
just-
big on the cursing though. How do you feel
which
about
I don't.
that?
I don't mind because that's who he is.
I don't care.
I don't mind. Some people may be turned off by it, but
For those out there who don't know who this is, give them a little bit of descriptor of who Gary is.
he's an investor, media mogul. He's the CEO of VaynerMedia. He started off in the wine business and kind of made that transition, but he's a hard worker.
Yeah.
He puts in the time.
He's a hustler.
That's what I really respect. You know, he's not, kind of just out there just telling you this and that. Like, he lives it. You know,
And he gets you fired up because he's kind of living the life that you eventually want to live. Is that how you connect with that?
not necessarily, but some of his messages in terms of, doing what you're passionate about. You
Right.
know, just forget what everybody else is talking about. You know, you're not going to be happy doing, living a life that somebody else might pay for you, or your parents want you to live. You know, do
Right.
what you want to do, and if that's making $50,000 a year, so what? You know?
Right. Don't chase the money.
Don't chase the money, yeah. And
the
that's
money
what I
will
really
always
respect.
come.
You know, his messages are really authentic, and it's common sense to me. So
Right. And I think those brands are the brands that resonate the best. Is one that is common sense. You know, if anyone who follows me on social media, I'm not, reinventing the wheel here. I'm not saying anything that people don't know. I'm just putting it in a way that's authentic to me and
Yeah.
authentic to the end user. And so I think Gary, I completely agree with you. I think Gary is the same. He's not reinventing the wheel. He's just telling people what we already know. He's just framing it in a way that's more tangible
Exactly.
for people to get at. Going from the really great to the not so really great, what is a social media trend that you just want to see go away?
Well, we kind of talked about it before, like the naked women. Like, I hate, like, it's okay, like, do you, but like, I hate how like females will post like these pictures and then be like, I'm an entrepreneur, like I'm a public figure, when they're really just a girl who's posting.
And
naked
first of all,
photos.
you're not a public figure.
Yeah, and that's the
I
thing.
mean,
It's
who designated you the title of public figure?
Like, they'll have
My
like,
butcher's a public figure.
like bookings and email this for
Right.
like business inquiries, and it's like,
And what
come
kind
on.
of business are we talking about
Exactly.
here
It's
when you're
like-
showing your ass?
That's my
I'm
point.
But here, I think this is a very, we laugh about it, we joke about it, but I'm very concerned about this trend of hordes of young women out there and old women that probably shouldn't are they're taking off their clothes or getting as naked as they can and putting it out there, and it's getting attention.
Yeah.
It's always going to get attention, but I think this is I personally, I'm not a psychiatrist or anything like that, but I think in the news just the other day, there was a study done talking about young African American girls and how people don't view them as needing as much protection, and it concerns me that this is all a very, women and being scantily clad and the treatment of young girls and how they're being over sexualized at a very young age. I'm going down a very deep wormhole here, but it really does bother me. And to hear a young man who is supposed to be someone who is interested in those kinds of pictures say that, you're like, this has got to go.
I think it's just more so degrading.
Right.
I feel like females should have more respect for themselves. So.
I mean, and what? I mean, I don't think we have the answer of how we're gonna bring that to a stop. But when women see it in videos, in magazines, and on social media, but you're saying we gotta go, and that you're saying, as a dude, I don't respect you if you're putting yourself out in that way.
Yeah, personally, I don't. I mean, I don't think people really they see you as just a sexual image,
right?
And it's not really you're not having self-respect for yourself. Then how can you expect anyone else to respect you? So
right.
That's when you have these women who are involved in these sexual assault cases and this and that because they do. I'm not saying it's it's right, but it happens because you put yourself in that light. So
let's just not. Let's just keep our clothes on.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a trend, but
wasn't there like an '80s song? We don't have to take our clothes off
in the '90s, so.
to have a good time. Oh no, that's a real song. Look it up. You can Google that shit. So. What celebrity do you think right now is producing the best content? Who's putting the best content out there? Celebrity, athlete, politician, etc. Putting the best content out there.
I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Probably not.
Joel Embiid. He plays for the 76ers.
I mean.
But he's hilarious. And I think he's
what
just
is he
really,
doing? Tell me about it.
He says what he wants, when he wants, and he doesn't care who's looking at it. But it's like really him. So.
But is it offensive or is it funny?
It's funny. No,
okay.
It's funny.
Okay, so he's not trying to get not trying to get the negative rise. He's trying to get the comedic rise out of people.
He's the real deal. He's a genuine dude from my perspective, and from what I see on social media.
And does he do a good mix of? Is it pictures? Is it text? Is it video? Like how does he keep it fresh and interesting?
I mean, honestly, I don't follow him, so I don't know. But I see a lot of his posts on Instagram on like the Explore page, and it'll be a lot of like images. He does some video too.
Right.
But it's just all comedy. Like he's just a funny dude.
He's just funny. He's just a clown.
He's a clown.
Yeah, he keeps it light and keeps it interesting.
Right.
And you can tell by when you watch him that you're just looking at someone who just likes to keep it light. That's his brand.
Yeah, exactly.
That's his brand.
Exactly.
Awesome. And so, who is your social media crush?
It could be anybody, or like.
I'm trying to tell you your business. Yes, it can be anybody.
That's
you
hard.
got the questions in advance. This is not a surprise.
I didn't really think about this one, but
what?
Probably, because I probably have a few. So I like, if we're talking about just actresses, I like Megan Good. I really like Jennifer Lopez. I think she's gorgeous.
Who doesn't? I love J-Lo.
So those are.
I think she sleeps in a cryobaric chamber. Like she doesn't age.
She doesn't.
I mean, she has not aged.
She doesn't.
It's amazing.
She's beautiful to me. So those will probably be my top two, but that list probably goes on for a little while. So.
Oh my God. Creepador. Oh my God. Any other thoughts about your brand, about where you're going, what you're doing? What is the next thing that we can expect from you? I mean, we got this book coming out in paperback soon, but we always want to know what's next. What can we expect next from Malcolm?
Well, it kind of depends on, how this next couple months turn out with basketball, but I expect to write another book. Also trying to get the workbook out for that in the next couple months, but just continue to write, try to get on some more publications, things of that nature.
Right.
So.
And so where can people find you if they want to connect with you? Where can they go?
Well, all my social media profiles is my name. So Malcolm Lemons on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, you can go to my website at www.malcolmlemons.com and talk to me on there. So.
He's global. He's worldwide.
I try to be international now. So.
That's right. International man of mystery is what you are. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We are running out of time, but there's a couple of things that I wanted to get out there. Again, if you want to connect with us and be part of the conversation, you can join us. Oh my God, I just slipped. We almost had an incident there. You can connect with us on Twitter at LTB Brand Radio, and then connect with us on Instagram at Let's Talk Personal. A big thank you to my show sponsors, Columbia Lighthouse for the Blind and Co-Create. I mean, this whole thing just got me all kind of whatever. Join us next week. We will be back next week with another fantastic live show. Joining me next week is my longtime friend, DJ Johnson, who is the VP of Membership at ASID. I'm super excited to reconnect with him. This has been a long time coming, and he has a lot of perspective to bring to the table. So until next week, I'm Frances Reimers, and thank you for joining us on Let's Talk Personal.